Can't keep this video long because I have to go. In fact, people are waiting on me as we speak. But I saw this when I first woke up this morning, and it's big news. It's extremely big news. And the first time around, there was a failure on this front, but now it seems like South Korea is doing the right thing. So they have voted to impeach President Yoon. What is it? Yoon Suk Yeol, for his martial law decree. If you remember, he comes out of the blue and says this.
가능한 한 빠른 시간 내에 반국가 세력을 척결하고 국가를 정상화시키겠습니다. 계엄 선포로 인해 자유 대한민국 헌
Now, I'm assuming you don't speak Korean. Neither do I. But if you read at the bottom, he is effectively saying, this is a martial law decree. I am declaring martial law. And I'm doing so, according to him, because there are subversive North Korean elements in the other party that is effectively holding up this and threatening democracy. So in defense of democracy, I am ending democracy. It was an astonishing speech. What they found when they were doing investigation, because they raided his office, this lasted for 4 hours. The public got involved to an astonishing degree. So this was one of the events that took place. Because the moment he did this, at 10 o'clock at night, parliamentarians go streaming to the parliament, like running to the parliament, old men diving into the parliament in order to vote down that martial law decree because it was out the blue. Parliament is controlled by the opposition party. He is running the main party. Think of it like if Democrats held Congress, but he was the president. Think of it in those terms. They came in, voted it down immediately. Even his own party in the National Assembly said this was a wrong move. Now, the catch becomes, why did he do this? I mean, here's one of the other scenes that took place that night. I mean, this was radically dramatic of what was happening. Here's another scene of the public being fully engaged to stop this from happening. Now, in the other video that I showed, I want you to look at the bottom of this. Because at the very bottom, what it's demonstrating is, in one sense, Parliament. In another sense, the public fighting tooth and nail to keep the cops or the military from barging in to stop Parliament. Look at it. They're fighting for their democracy. And look at the cameras. They're recording what these people are doing, meaning what the security is doing as they are doing it. Because ultimately, the question that I asked, and that is always definitive in a dictatorship when the person is stealing power like this, are you going to shoot your own citizens? Meaning they're videotaping these guards that they're trying to rush in order to stop Parliament from making this vote. By law, the Assembly has the right to vote on whether the martial law declaration is valid, in which case they were doing that. He was trying to prevent them from making that vote. That decree said there is no more assembly, meaning the people can't come together to assemble, no protests. The press was going to be under the control of the government, and the General Assembly, that had every right to vote on it, was not supposed to be able to meet. Just an astonishing declaration. So this, of course, got massive pushback from the public, from the media. Everybody was against it. It lasted for 4 hours. The U.S., who this guy's a puppet of, he is obsequious to a ridiculous, absurd degree to the United States. The U.S. was quiet over the course that this was basically taking place. And there was a question of whether or not he was going to try to go through with this. The general that was working with him basically said, yes, I'm going to follow the president's order. Now, 4 hours it lasted. 4 hours. It ended. The general that was involved resigned. He was arrested. He tried to kill himself with his own underwear when he found out that he was arrested. The president was being investigated and wasn't allowed to leave the country, meaning his passport was effectively revoked while the investigation was taking place. And initially, they tried to impeach. Now, the president's own party boycotted that vote. This was the second vote that took place last night, and the president was finally impeached. He's finally impeached. There was a vote tally 204 to 85 that said, get the F out. You're done, sir. Leave. Nope, nope. Leave. Leave. Get the fuck out. This is long overdue. Now, he is being investigated. He could be arrested. He should be. By the way, there's a court hearing that's going to take place. That's going to have to take place in 180 days, the Constitutional Court, to make a decision on whether or not this is valid. And if it is deemed valid, you're out. Now, the investigation is going to take place if indeed the court votes to kick him out of office. Because right now, all of his duties are suspended. He can't do anything. He's just there in a penalty box. If 180 days the court says leave, then there's going to be an election in 60 days. Right now, the prime minister, from my understanding, is in charge. Meaning those powers have effectively devolved to the opposition party. Right here. The prime minister powers duties are subsequently suspended. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, the country's number 2 official, took the presidential powers on Saturday. So the opposition party is taking power now. And I can't believe if there's it would be astonishing if the Constitutional Court validated that decree. That decree was out of the blue. There was nothing to attach it to. There was nothing that was taking place in the country. He couldn't get done what he wanted to get done. And I want to go to the last point before I end this video. In 180 days, let's say an election, I cannot believe his party would win. How could they under these circumstances? This president was radically unlike. I think he was in the 20% or less in regards to popular support. And in the election, he was most likely going to lose. And in the election coming up, I would be stunned as shit if the party who he belonged to, that boycotted the vote, despite the fact that the overwhelming public media and the overwhelming sentiment was, he has to go. I can't believe that they would be able to put up a candidate that would win. The opposition party had said something to the effect of, why are we at war with China? Why do we need to be at war in this way? Why are we a platform for the U.S. to attack China? That makes no sense to us. Hence, there's North Korean sentiment. There's Chinese sentiment. This guy's a U.S. puppet. And I want to pose a theory, or a hypothesis, more accurately, that this wasn't random. This guy had planned this for months on end. They were going to arrest various members of parliament or opposition figures that he thought may cause an issue. This was planned. So the investigation that's taking place is going to go through and investigate everybody that might have anything to do with it. From my point of view, is it arbitrary? Or does it have something to do with Trump? Now, the reason I say that is, let's assume for the moment that the orthodoxy of the U.S., this kind of foreign policy blob, this uniparty ruling order that has a certain point of view of the world in regards to war and conflict and exporting conflicts around the world in order to get a certain level of geopolitical control. What if they actually believe what Donald Trump was saying on the campaign trail? What if, when Trump says, I'm going to end wars, not start, why are we in Syria? Why are we at odds with North Korea? Joe Biden screwed it up. Why are we going after opposition leaders in Europe? What if they believe what he said on the campaign trail. That yes, I'm going to end the war with Ukraine. And they knew last time that Donald Trump was in, he ended Obama's program in Syria. He went and made peace with North Korea, where they stopped firing missiles into the Sea of Japan, even getting closer to reunification, or the very least talks with South Korea. What if they believe him? And in the context of believing him, South Korea may not be as much of a patsy and as obedient as we think, because again, they have a democracy. They can choose, okay, we don't want to get into these wars with China. We want to actually make peace with North Korea. We don't want to be in this opposition US military base as a platform against these other countries. What if they don't believe that South Korea would follow the dictates in the way that they want South Korea to do so? Because as I pointed out in other videos, democracies are problematic. The reason that we overthrow various countries is because we want control of those countries. And if you have a democracy, at some point that government can say, F off. If you have a dictatorship, you got to please one guy. In the South Korean case, what if he did that with the knowledge of the US? Because they don't necessarily believe that South Korea, especially in an opposition government, would be obedient to the US dictates and would be willing, under a Trump administration, to get closer to North Korea. What if in Europe, when you have these opposition candidates to the war saying, look, why are we doing this? Why? I don't want Romanian citizens going and killing themselves for Russia or within the Russian fight. I don't want Georgian citizens to go and kill themselves in a Russian fight. I'm a Georgian nationalist. I'm a Romanian nationalist. Why are we doing this? I don't like this. In which case, they need some more democracy. And that democracy means we're going to have the court to kill Georgescu, his election win, or what was going to be an election win, and force another election, even though he was going to win that election. Or in Georgia, try to overthrow the government with the president, Saakashvili, saying, I'm not leaving. I don't care what the vote is. I'm not leaving. Like, is this random that all of these people are effectively using the term democracy in order to destroy democracy? I mean, they're calling Ukraine a democracy, despite the fact Zelensky has no elections. He's king of Ukraine at this point, with our backing, as we cover it, saying Ukraine is the democracy. Is it random? That's my point. All of these places, on some level, have something to do with Trump. In Europe, these guys are nationalists. Donald Trump has pointed out, or at the very least people in his administration has pointed out, why are you going after, this is a travesty, what you're trying to do in those countries, let the nationalists win. And in South Korea, Trump, I haven't heard him comment on it, but the reality of it is, his policy toward North Korea may go back to what it was prior. And in Syria, his policy in Syria might have went back to what it was prior. Pull the troops out. Why are we there? I'm going to end wars, not start them. I'm saying this chaos around the globe may not necessarily be completely isolated, that these things may be directly related. And in the South Korean case, that guy could be executed. My point of view is he should be executed. You need to make it very clear that when you endow that much power into a person, that doesn't become a norm, that it becomes very clear we are playing for keeps. And if I don't win this dictatorship that I'm trying to implement, I could lose my head. You need to create a disincentive for leaders to do that in order to prevent leaders from doing exactly what he just tried to do. He tried to turn South Korea into a dictatorship that would have been completely obsequious and a patsy to the United States, most likely without a veto, anything that took place. Because again, at that point, it would have been no longer a democracy. South Koreans got involved. Good for South Korea. Applaud, applaud, applaud. I'm going to end it here. I mean, just fascinating. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. If I'm right, though, whether I think Trump is serious or not on that stuff, they seem to think so. And I'm saying they, meaning the orthodoxy, this kind of power structure in Europe and the United States to have this kind of consensus in regards to the way the world operates and the way the world works. And anything that goes against that consensus is deemed undemocratic, despite the fact that the public is making a democratic choice to kick these guys out. It's astonishing. It is a rational act to say, I don't want my citizens going to die in a war for no reason. It is a rational act to say, why are we pivoting against China in this way when they're not trying to attack anybody? They want to win-win relationships. Why are we doing this? Why are we a platform for the U.S. to do this? That is a rational act. That is what a human being would say, as opposed to somebody who is bought, paid off, or buys into this idea of geopolitical dominance, even at the expense of our own populations for the U.S. best interests. Those are rational acts. What Europe is doing is so undemocratic, it is mind-blowing. What this guy tried to do was so undemocratic, it is mind-blowing. And again, I want to put out all of these people, all of these sociopaths, I don't know what else to call them, are doing this under the guise of protecting democracy. We're destroying democracy to protect democracy. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. You all have a fantastic day. I'll probably see you later this evening. Signing off. Oh, by the way, if you really dig this content, you can support this content through PayPal, Patreon, or for that matter, Super Chats. You can also become a member. You can become a member of the Thomas family. We have had, I think, 20 members at this point. And I want to thank all of you for joining this family. You guys are, you're buying the content. You're supporting the content. Yeah, don't know what to say. Some people said, buy me a cup of coffee. Fair enough. Buy me a cup of coffee. You guys have a good one. I'll see you later this evening. Signing off. But South Korea, bravo! Whoa. Send that motherfucker back. Put him in a prison. Lock his ass in a cage. Whatever you got to do. This should not be allowed to pass. Have a good one all.